The air in the Grand Conclave hung heavy and still, like the moment before lightning strikes. High above the surface of the neutral world of Xylos, inside a vast chamber shaped like a spiraling shell, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in judgment. Their seats floated in rings around a central platform, lit by soft, shifting lights that changed color with the mood of the room. 217 alien species watched in silence. Some had eyes that glowed, others had skin like polished stone, and a few breathed gases that would kill a human in seconds. They were the Galactic Council, the Law, the Peacekeepers, the rulers of everything beyond Earth. On the platform below, 3 humans stood alone. They wore simple uniforms, dark blue with silver trim, no armor, no weapons. Just 3 people facing an empire of stars. Captain Elias Rourke stood in the center, his boots planted firmly on the smooth floor. His face was calm, but his eyes scanned the chamber like a soldier expecting ambush. To his left stood Ambassador Lin Tran, her hands clasped loosely in front of her, her expression unreadable. To his right, Dr. Eris Thorne held a small black data core against his chest like a shield. A low hum filled the room as the High Arbiter rose. Vexus of the Marathi was tall, his body covered in dark, segmented plates that clicked softly as he moved, 4 arms folded across his chest and his many eyes fixed on the humans with cold contempt. Species designation: human. Vexus intoned, his voice echoing through the chamber like stone grinding on stone. You stand accused of violating Article 7 of the Prime Accord, the prohibition against unsanctioned quantum manipulation. Your scientists have weaponized entanglement fields. Your ships have fired phantom pulses that bypass our shields. You have broken the peace. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species hissed, others pulsed with light. All of them expected the humans to beg, but Elias didn't flinch. We didn't break your peace, he said, his voice clear and steady. We exposed your war. A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. No one spoke to the council like that. Not and lived. Vexus tilted his head slightly. Explain. Elias nodded to Aris, who stepped forward and placed the data core on the floor. With a tap of his finger, a hologram burst to life above them. A star map, then footage. Clear, undeniable footage. It showed a council stealth vessel, sleek and black, planting explosives on a human mining station near Proxima Centauri. Then another clip. Karathi diplomats receiving falsified evidence, doctored logs, fake transmissions, all pointing to Earth as the attacker. Then more. Varelian trade convoys ambushed by ships bearing human insignia. Insignia that flickered and vanished under close scan. You framed us, Lynn said, her voice quiet but sharp as glass. You needed a scapegoat. A weak species to blame when your own black ops failed. You thought we'd be easy to crush. The chamber fell utterly silent. Even the ambient hum seemed to stop. Vexus remained still for a long moment. Then he spoke slower now. Even if this were true, which it is not, your species has no fleet. No allies, no seat at this table. You are children playing with fire in a powder house. Elias smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Then you should have put out the match before we lit the whole room. He raised his hand, not in surrender, but in signal. At that exact moment across the galaxy, something changed. On every human colony, from the ice domes of Europa to the orbital farms of Titan, lights flickered once. Not from power loss, but from activation. Hidden systems, buried deep in civilian infrastructure, powered up. Relay stations that the Council had dismissed as simple communication hubs began broadcasting. Not messages, pulses, encrypted quantum-locked signals that bypassed normal space. Back in the chamber, alarms blared suddenly. Red lights flashed along the upper rings. A Varelian delegate shouted in alarm. A Korathi officer slammed a fist on his console. What is this? Vexus demanded. Elias turned slowly to face the Arbiter. You spent 50 years watching our warships, our armies, our borders. But you never looked at our schools, our hospitals, our farms. Every human settlement is a node. Every power grid a weapon. Every child who learns to code, a soldier. He paused, letting the words sink in. We didn't come here to defend ourselves, he said. We came here to declare war. Gasps filled the chamber. War. From Earth, it was absurd, laughable, and yet the alarms kept screaming. Lynn stepped forward now. The Galactic Council revoked our rights. You labeled us a threat, fine, then treat us like one. But know this, we don't fight like you. We don't send fleets to die in open battle. We adapt, we endure. We turn your own systems against you. Eris added quietly. Your relay network runs on quantum entanglement relays, built with human-designed error correction algorithms. We wrote the code. We can rewrite it. Vexus's plates bristled. You dare threaten the council in its own hall? I don't threaten, Elias said. I inform. Effective immediately. Earth withdraws all recognition of the Galactic Council's authority. All treaties are void. All embassies closed. And as of this moment, humanity is at war not with your people but with your control. Silence again. Thick, stunned silence, then chaos, delegates shouted. Security drones swarmed the platform. But the humans didn't move. They just stood there, calm, as if they'd already won. Because they had. While the council panicked, human engineers on Mars rerouted atmospheric processors to generate EMP bursts. In the asteroid belt, mining tugs detached from their stations and formed silent convoys. Their cargo holds packed not with ore, but with drone swarms. On Earth, every satellite in orbit shifted trajectory, forming a defensive net no one had seen coming. The galaxy had assumed humanity was weak because they asked for peace. They mistook diplomacy for fear, cooperation for submission. They were wrong. As guards moved to seize the human delegation, Elias gave one last look around the chamber. You thought you were judging us, he said. But history will judge you for underestimating what humans can do when they have nothing left to lose. Then the lights in the chamber flickered, not from malfunction, but from a signal sent from Earth, a single pulse clean and sharp, that shut down every non-essential system in the room for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, the humans vanished, not in a flash of light, but through hidden transport beams pre-planted in their boots during their arrival. The council had scanned them for weapons. They hadn't scanned for escape routes. By the time the lights returned, the platform was empty, but the war had already begun, and the galaxy, for the first time in 10,000 years, was afraid. In the days after the humans vanished from the Grand Conclave, the galaxy held its breath. The council issued emergency alerts, scrambled fleets, and sealed borders. But no human warships appeared. No bombs fell. No invasions came. Instead, silence spread like a fog across star systems once humming with trade and chatter. On the ice moon of Velos, Council Admiral Krellis paced the command deck of his flagship, the Iron Maw. His scaled hands clenched and unclenched as reports poured in, each one more confusing than the last. Sir, the Helios relay is offline, said a junior officer, voice tight with worry. Offline how? Krellis growled. No explosion. No attack, it just stopped responding, like someone flipped a switch. Krellis stared at the star map on the main screen. Dozens of human-linked outposts had gone dark in the same way. No distress calls, no debris fields, no signs of battle. It was as if humanity had folded itself into the void. They're hiding, Krellis muttered. But why? If they declared war, where's their fleet? He didn't know that the answer was already moving through the dark, far from Velos, beyond the edge of known space. In the cold shadow of the Kuiper Belt, a fleet of human ships waited. They were not grand like the Council's dreadnoughts, not gleaming or loud. They were sleek, matte black, and utterly silent. These were the Odyssey-class vessels, humanity's secret for over 20 years. Built not for show, but for survival. At the heart of the fleet, aboard the lead ship Aegis, Captain Mara Voss watched Earth shrink on her view screen. She was lean, with sharp eyes and a voice that rarely rose above a whisper. Yet every crew member on her ship would follow her into a black hole without question. All systems green, said her first officer, Jax, a former asteroid miner with grease still under his nails. Quantum cloak holding at 98% efficiency. Mara nodded. Good. The Council thinks stealth means hiding heat or bending light. They don't understand space-time. Human stealth wasn't about being unseen. It was about being unmeasurable. Using experimental gravity lenses and quantum phase shifters, the Odyssey ships bent local reality just enough to slip between the cracks of detection. To scanners, they didn't register as objects, they registered as empty space. Not cloaked, erased. Phase echo is ready, Jack said. Mara took a slow breath. Execute. Across the fleet, silent commands pulsed through encrypted channels. Engines didn't roar. They hummed at frequencies below hearing. Thrusters didn't flare. They nudged space-time itself. Their target, Helios Prime, the central relay hub of the entire Council network. It wasn't a military base. It was a communications nexus, a glowing ring of satellites and data towers orbiting a quiet yellow star. From there, orders flowed to every Council world. Cut it and the galaxy's nervous system would seize. No one saw the human fleet arrive. On Helios Prime, maintenance drones floated lazily between solar panels. Technicians sipped nutrient broth in the observation lounge, laughing about a joke from home. Peace, routine, safety. Then the lights flickered. Not a power surge. Not an alarm. Just a single strange flicker, like a blink. Deep in the station's core, a graviton pulse no bigger than a grain of sand detonated. It didn't explode outward. It collapsed inward, folding the station's central reactor into a micro-singularity for less than a nanosecond, long enough to scramble every circuit, melt every data crystal, and sever every connection. Helios Prime went dark. Back on Velos, Admiral Krellis stared at his screen as the star map blinked red. One by one, relay stations failed. Trade routes froze. Emergency broadcasts cut to static. Panic spread faster than any virus. How? He roared. How can they hit us without being seen? His science officer, a thin-skinned Virelian named Tael, whispered, They're not using weapons we understand. They're using physics, like tools. Meanwhile, on Mars, human engineers worked through the night. What the Council saw as terraforming drones, gentle machines seeding atmosphere and melting ice, were now reprogrammed. Their chemical sprayers now released nanomines that clung to passing ships waiting for a signal. Their solar wings folded into radar-jamming arrays. In the asteroid belt, old mining tugs, slow, rusted, ignored, docked with hidden cargo pods. Inside, missile racks built from repurposed drill arms, guidance systems coded in open-source software, warheads filled with compressed plasma from fusion reactors meant for heating habitats. Humanity had never built a true war machine. They didn't need to. Everything they made could become one. On Earth, children played in parks under skies that still looked peaceful. But beneath their feet, subway tunnels doubled as drone launch bays. Weather satellites tracked not just storms, but enemy fleet movements. Even hospitals ran backup power systems that could, if needed, flood city grids with EMP bursts. The Council had studied human history, wars, empires, revolutions. They assumed humans would fight like they always had, with guns, ships, and flags. They never realized that for humans, war wasn't just battle. It was invention. It was turning a toaster into a transmitter, a school bus into a shield, a lullaby into a code. Back in deep space, Mara Voss received a message from Earth. Just 3 words. They're listening now. She allowed herself a small smile. Next target, the Karathi supply hub at Row 7. They think their methane tanks are safe. They're wrong. The Aegis turned, silent as a shadow, and vanished into the dark. On the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Vexus called an emergency session. His voice, once full of certainty, now carried a tremor. We must find their fleet. Burn their colonies. And this before it spreads, but it was already spreading. A free trader near the Orion Spur reported seeing a human cargo ship drift past. Harmless. Empty. Hours later, that same ship's abandoned hull released a swarm of micro-drones that hijacked a Council patrol's navigation system, sending it crashing into a dead moon. On a farming moon in the outer rim, human agricultural bots, designed to plant crops, suddenly began digging trenches that doubled as anti-orbital trenches. Their irrigation pipes now carried liquid metal that could harden into shield walls in minutes. The galaxy was learning a terrible truth. You couldn't occupy human space. Because human space was never just space. It was a trap waiting to be sprung. Admiral Krellis finally understood. They're not hiding, he told his crew, voice hollow. They're everywhere. And he was right. While the Council searched the void for battleships, humanity was winning the war in plain sight, in workshops, in labs, in backyards. Every human, from the oldest scientist to the youngest student, had been trained not just to survive, but to repurpose, to improvise, to turn peace into power. Mara's fleet struck again, this time a Council fuel depot near Sirius. No explosion, just a quiet cascade failure that turned millions of tons of refined plasma into useless sludge. Another nerve severed. The Council scrambled to respond, but their ships moved slowly, their commands delayed by broken relays. Their weapons locked onto empty space while real threats slipped past. On Earth, people didn't cheer. They worked. They built. They planned. They knew the war wasn't about glory. It was about survival. And humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and their own mistakes. They would survive this, too. As the Aegis drifted between stars, Mara looked at a photo on her console, her niece laughing on a beach in California. She touched the screen gently. "We're not monsters," she whispered. "We're just tired of being prey." The fleet moved on, silent, unseen, unstoppable, and the galaxy, for the first time, felt the weight of a species that didn't need to shout to be heard, because their actions screamed louder than any war horn. While war raged in the dark between stars, another kind of battle unfolded on the quiet world of Silva. This world had no weapons, no armies, no warships. Its people, the Lumini, were beings of soft light and gentle thought. They lived in harmony with their forests, their cities grown from living trees that glowed with inner warmth. For centuries they had stayed neutral, offering wisdom but never taking sides. Now, Ambassador Lin Tran stood at the edge of their great grove. Alone, wearing simple gray robes instead of her Earth uniform, she carried no weapon, only a small data slate sealed in a wooden case. Her request for an audience had been denied 3 times, but she waited. She knew patience could be stronger than force. Finally, a figure emerged from the trees. Solon, the eldest of the Lumini, drifted forward like mist given form. Their bodies shimmered with pale gold light, and their voice came not as sound but as a feeling in the mind. Calm, deep, and ancient. "You return," Solon pulsed, "though we asked you not to." "I bring truth," Lin said, her voice steady. "Not war," Solon hesitated. The Lumine had watched the galaxy's chaos from afar. They had seen human ships strike Council relays. They had heard the Council call Earth reckless, dangerous, uncontrolled. And yet something felt wrong about that story. "Why should we listen?" Solon asked. "Because you value truth above all," Lin replied. "And the Council has lied to you for generations." She opened the wooden case and placed the data slate on a mossy stone. With a touch, it projected a soft beam of light into the air. Images formed, not of battles, but of records. Old records. Hidden records first. A recording from 300 years ago. A Lumine peace envoy traveling to mediate a border dispute between the Karathi and the Varelians. The ship vanished. The Council declared it lost to a solar storm, but here was the truth. Footage from a hidden camera on a nearby asteroid. A Council Black Ops vessel disabled the Lumini ship, then erased its signal. The envoy was never heard from again. Next, a document buried in old archives. Proof that the Council had edited Lumine historical texts, removing mentions of early contact with human explorers 2 centuries ago, contact that had been peaceful, even friendly. The Council had cut that memory from history to keep the Lumini isolated, dependent, and obedient. Then, a final piece. Audio logs of Council leaders discussing how to manage the Lumini, how their empathy made them useful for calming rebellions, but dangerous if they ever questioned authority. Solon's light dimmed. The feeling in Lin's mind shifted. Sorrow, then anger, then shame. "You knew," Solon pulsed softly. "We found the files after we broke into a Council data vault near Neptune," Lin said. "We didn't steal weapons. We stole truth." She stepped closer. "The Council fears one thing more than war: unity. They keep species apart. They feed mistrust. They make you believe you're alone. But humans, we share. Our medicine, our music, our science. We don't take, we give." Solon was silent for a long time. Around them, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then a single pulse of warm light. "Show me more." Over the next 2 days, Lin shared everything. Not just evidence of lies, but examples of human cooperation. How Earth sent doctors to help during the Varelian plague. How human engineers helped rebuild Karathi water systems after a quake. How human artists exchanged songs with refugee colonies from fallen worlds. The Lumine began to understand. Humanity wasn't reckless. They were connected, and that connection was their strength. On the 3rd morning, Solon stood before the entire Lumine conquered, a circle of elders gathered beneath the great canopy. Lin stood with them, not as a guest, but as a witness. "The Council has used us," Solon announced, their light now strong and clear. "They have twisted our history, silenced our voice, and turned our peace into a tool. No more." A murmur of agreement rippled through the elders. One by one, their lights brightened. "We sever all ties with the Galactic Council," Solon declared. "Effective immediately." That same day, a Lumini signal, pure, unencrypted, and powerful, broadcast across the galaxy. It carried not words but raw truth. The unedited records, the hidden logs, the proof of deception. Every species that could receive it saw what the Council had done. The effect was immediate. On the crystal plains of Virelia, the ruling council gathered in emergency session. Their leader, Mira, stared at the footage of their own people being framed by council agents during a border incident years ago. Her crystalline skin turned from blue to deep red, a sign of rage. "They made us hate humans," she whispered. "But humans saved our children during the fever outbreak. They sent nanobots that healed what our medicine could not." Within hours, Virelia recalled its fleet from Council Command. They would no longer fight Earth. Next came the Outer Rim Guild, a loose alliance of traders, miners, and free colonists. They had long resented Council taxes and restrictions. Now, seeing the truth, they declared neutrality, but quietly began rerouting supplies to human outposts. Food, fuel, spare parts. Not as allies. As neighbors, even some Karathi commanders hesitated. Their methane-breathing warriors had been told humans were savage, unstable. But now they saw logs of human medics treating wounded Karathi after a mining accident. No questions asked, no payment demanded. The Council's grip was cracking. Back on Silva, Lynn prepared to leave. Solon walked with her to the landing pad where a small human shuttle waited. "You have changed the course of this war," Solon pulsed. "No," Lynn said. "Truth changed it. I just carried it." She boarded the shuttle, but before the door closed, she turned. "One more thing. The Council's inner core, the Marathi, the High Command, they won't surrender. They'll use something worse. Something we haven't seen." Solon's light flickered with concern. "What?" Lynn's eyes were grim. "They'll attack not our bodies, but our minds." The shuttle lifted off, leaving Silva behind. But the seed had been planted. Across the galaxy, species once loyal to the Council began to question, to doubt, to remember. And doubt, once it takes root, is harder to kill than any army. On Earth, people watched the news feeds with quiet hope. Not because they were winning battles, but because they were winning trust. A Virelian ship docked at Luna Station, not to fight but to trade medical supplies. A group of free traders sent a message. "We stand with those who speak truth." The war was no longer just human versus Council. It was truth versus control. But Lynn's warning echoed in the minds of Earth's leaders. The Council's inner circle was desperate, and desperate beings do desperate things. Deep in the galactic core, in a fortress built inside a dead star, the Council's top scientists activated a project long buried, Mindfire. A weapon not of fire or steel, but of thought, designed to erase minds, not lives. They believed it would end humanity in a single stroke. They did not understand that the human mind was not a single thing to be erased, but a million sparks, each one stubborn, each one fighting to remember. But that battle was coming. For now, on Silva, the trees glowed brighter than they had in centuries, and far away in the dark between stars, human ships moved not just with stealth but with growing support. The galaxy was waking up, and it was choosing sides. The first sign came as a whisper in the mind. On Luna Base, technician Ravi Mehta was checking oxygen levels when his thoughts slipped. He forgot his sister's name, then his own. He stared at the control panel, fingers hovering over buttons he no longer recognized. Around him, others collapsed, some crying, some silent, all lost in a fog where memory used to be. On Earth, in a classroom in Nairobi, a teacher stopped mid-sentence. She looked at her students but could not remember what a student was. In Tokyo, a pilot forgot how to land his sky transport. In Buenos Aires, a child called for her mother but could not recall her face. No explosions. No radiation. Just silence where thought should be. Deep in the galactic core, inside a fortress built into the husk of a dead star, the Council had activated Project Mindfire. It was not a bomb. It was a wave, a psionic pulse tuned to the frequency of conscious thought. It traveled faster than light, riding on quantum threads woven into the fabric of space. Its purpose was not to kill but to unmake, to erase the patterns that made a mind a mind. The Council had used it once before, long ago, against the Zenthari, a species that dared to question their rule. The Zenthari didn't die. They simply stopped being. Their cities stood empty, their tools untouched, their bodies alive but hollow, minds wiped clean. Now they aimed it at Earth. Dr. Eris Thorne felt the wave hit like a cold hand closing around his brain. He was in Geneva, leading Earth's Cognitive Defense Initiative, a team of neuroscientists, AI specialists, and poets. Yes, poets, because in the human mind, logic and beauty were equally strong. Eris stumbled, gripping the edge of a table. His vision blurred. He saw his daughter's birthday party, but the faces were smudges. The song was noise. Panic rose, sharp and hot. But then he remembered the training. For years, Earth had prepared for this, not with shields, but with memory anchors. Human minds were messy, chaotic, full of redundancies. Unlike species with rigid neural pathways or hive-linked thoughts, humans remembered through stories, smells, songs, emotions. You could erase a fact, but not the feeling of your grandmother's hand. Initiate Echo Protocol. Eris gasped into his comm. Across the planet, hidden systems responded. In every home, every school, every hospital, speakers crackled to life, not with alarms, but with voices. A lullaby from Mumbai, a folk song from Ireland, a recipe being read aloud in Mexico City, a child reciting multiplication tables in Seoul, a fisherman humming a sea shanty in Oslo. These were not random. They were memory triggers, simple, emotional, deeply human. On Luna Base, Ravi heard his mother's voice singing a nursery rhyme he hadn't heard since he was 5. His hands stopped shaking. He remembered oxygen levels. He remembered his sister's name, Priya. In Nairobi, the teacher heard a student's voice, her own student, reciting a poem they'd written together. The words came back. She smiled weakly and finished her lesson. The mind-fire wave kept coming, thick and suffocating. But it met resistance, not steel but song. Not logic, but love. Eris and his team flooded the global network with randomized anchors. Not just words, but smells simulated through home vents. Fresh bread, rain on soil, ocean spray. Tactile feedback through smart fabrics. Textures of childhood blankets, the grip of a favorite toy. Even taste. Nano-dispensers in water systems released hints of flavors tied to strong memories. Cinnamon, lemon, salt. The human mind, trained for generations to find meaning in chaos, began to rebuild itself. And then something unexpected happened. The mind-fire wave, designed to erase, began to fracture. Human thoughts were too varied, too unpredictable. One mind clung to a joke, another to a regret, a third to the smell of a first kiss. The wave couldn't find a single pattern to destroy. So it split, scattered, weakened. Worse, for the Council, it bounced back, because the Echo Protocol didn't just defend. It reflected. The pulse, now infused with human memory fragments, surged back along the quantum threads toward its source, toward the Council's psionic conduits. On the Marathi homeworld, High Arbiter Vexus screamed. He felt it first as a whisper, his mother's voice, calling him home from the hive fields. Then a flood, memories he had buried for centuries, the first time he lied to gain rank, the orders he gave that killed innocents, the faces of those he betrayed, the shame he locked away. His mind, built for control, not chaos, could not handle the flood. His plates rattled. His eyes dimmed. Around him, other Marathi collapsed, overwhelmed by truths they had spent lifetimes hiding. On the Council fortress in the Dead Star, alarms blared. "Feedback loop," shouted a scientist. "The weapon is reversing." But it was too late. The mindfire wave, now carrying the weight of 1 billion human memories, joy, grief, hope, fear, ripped through the Council's neural network. Their psionic amplifiers overloaded. Their command centers fell silent, not from destruction, but from confusion. Back on Earth, the fog lifted. People blinked. Looked around, remembered. In Geneva, Eris sat down heavily, tears on his cheeks. He pulled up a photo on his screen, his daughter laughing on a swing. He whispered her name like a prayer. Then he stood. We're not done. He knew the Council would not stop. But now they were wounded. And humans never let an enemy stay down for long. Across the planet, people didn't celebrate. They acted. Musicians uploaded new songs laced with memory codes. Teachers recorded lessons filled with emotional cues. Gamers built virtual worlds where players solved puzzles using personal memories, training minds to resist erasure. Even children helped. A boy in Jakarta made a meme so absurd, a dancing cat wearing a spacesuit eating moon cheese, that it went viral across neutral networks. Its randomness broke psionic resonance patterns. It became a shield. The Council had tried to erase humanity's soul. Instead, they had reminded humanity how strong it was. On Luna Base, Ravi sent a message to Priya. I remembered your name. Always will. In Nairobi, the teacher finished her poem with her students. In Tokyo, the pilot landed safely. In Buenos Aires, the child hugged her mother tight. And deep in space, Captain Maravos received a new order from Earth. Target the Council's psionic core, not to destroy, to silence. The Aegis turned toward the galactic core not with weapons, but with a new kind of pulse, one built from human voices, human songs, human truth. The war was no longer about ships or stations. It was about who got to remember, and humanity, with all its messy, beautiful, stubborn minds, refused to forget. The Grand Conclave chamber was not full this time. Half the seats sat empty. The Varelians were gone. The free traders of the Outer Rim had left weeks ago. Even some Marathi delegates had vanished, ashamed or afraid. The air felt thinner, colder, as if the room itself knew its power was ending. On the central platform, the three humans returned, not as prisoners, not as rebels, but as equals. Captain Elias Rourke, Ambassador Lin Tran, and Dr. Eris Thorne stood together, calm and steady. They wore no armor, carried no weapons. They did not need to. The war was over. Now came the peace. High Arbiter Vexus rose slowly. His once proud plates were dull, his movements heavy. The Mindfire backlash had aged him. His voice, when it came, was quieter than before. You have broken the Council, he said. Our networks fail. Our allies leave. Our people question. What do you want? Our surrender? Our worlds? Ilias looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of those who remained. The Karathi, the few loyal Virelians, the insectoid Myrathi elders. We don't want your worlds, he said. We want your table, Lin stepped forward. For centuries, the Council decided who mattered. Who spoke? Who lived? You called it order. We call it control. That ends now. She placed a simple data slate on the floor, not filled with threats but with terms. First, the Prime Accord was dissolved. No more secret treaties. No more black ops. All records open to all species. Second, quantum research once banned would be shared openly. Human scientists would work with Virelian crystal mines and Karathi engineers to build safer, fairer tech. Third, a new defense pact. Not to fight each other, but to face real threats, like the void swarms now drifting from Andromeda devouring stars. Humanity had already detected them. The Council had ignored the warnings, but the most shocking term came last. The new Council, Lin said, will have no permanent rulers. No inner circle. Every species, no matter how small, how young, how strange, gets one voice. Even those without ships. Even those who live on single worlds. Even those who speak through song or light or silence. A Karathi delegate stirred. That is chaos. No, Eris said gently. That is democracy. You feared us because we're unpredictable. But unpredictability is how life survives extinction. A forest doesn't grow from one tree. It grows from thousands. Vexus stared at the slate. He wanted to refuse, to rage, but he remembered the flood of memories the Mindfire sent back. The lies he told, the lives he ruined. He remembered the silence in his own hive when his youngest sibling asked, Why do we obey? He looked at Elias, and if we say no? Elias didn't smile. Then the relays stay dark. The fleets stay hidden. The truth keeps spreading. You'll rule over ruins. Silence filled the chamber again. But this time it was not the silence of judgment. It was the silence of choice. Then slowly, Vexus bowed his head. We accept, not all agreed. A few hardliners stormed out, but most stayed, because they saw what the humans offered was not revenge, it was a future. Outside the chamber, on the landing platforms of Xylos, something new began. A human shuttle docked beside a Virelian crystal carrier. No weapons raised, no scanners active, just open hatches. From the human ship stepped engineers with toolkits. From the Virelian ship came light beings carrying data crystals. They met in the middle and shook hands, or what passed for hands. Nearby, a Karathi methane tender shared fuel with a Mars freighter. On the observation deck, a Marathi scientist showed a human student how to read star maps through scent trails. The student laughed and offered a chocolate bar. The Marathi sniffed it, then, after checking it wouldn't poison him, took a bite. His eyes widened. Back on Earth, children played under clear skies. No sirens, no alerts, just birdsong and the hum of solar panels. In classrooms, teachers spoke of the new accord, not as victory but as responsibility. "We didn't win because we were stronger," one said. "We won because we refused to become what they feared." In Geneva, Aris watched a live feed from Silva. The Luminae were planting a new grove, trees grown from seeds brought by humans, Virelians, and Karathi alike. Each species had added something. Human water filters, Virelian light fungi, Karathi root strengtheners. The grove would glow with many colors. On the moon, Ravi Mehta helped install a new comms array, one that broadcast not just data, but music, stories, and lessons from every world now in the Pact. He played his sister's favorite song as he worked, and in deep space, Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge of the Aegis, watching a new star chart form on her screen. It showed not borders but connections, trade routes, research outposts, joint patrols watching the edge of Andromeda. Her first officer, Jax, leaned against the console. "So and what now?" Mara smiled. "Now we build, not empires, not weapons, not walls, bridges." The galaxy had spent millennia fearing difference. Humanity showed that difference was strength, that a species that shared its pain, its joy, its mistakes could not be broken. High Arbiter. Vexus, now simply Vexus, walked alone through the emptying conclave hall. He stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. For the first time, he did not see subjects to control. He saw neighbors. On Earth, a child in Nairobi wrote a letter to a Luminae elder. In Oslo, a fisherman taught a Karathi how to tie knots. In Buenos Aires, a grandmother told her granddaughter the story of the war, not as a tale of heroes, but as a warning. Never let fear silence truth. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had reminded it how to live. And as the first joint council meeting began, humans, Virelians, Karathi, Luminae, and dozens more, no one sat at the head of the table, because there was no head, only a circle. And in that circle, for the first time in history, every voice mattered. The stars watched, and for the first time in eons, they saw hope.